Hello, everyone, and welcome to Afternoon Tea. My name is Brittany. So sorry for a bit of the delay, but I had a late lunch, so I was trying to finish up my lunch real quick. And I happened to get a lovely royal fashion item that is going to be arriving imminently, except for the fact that it requires a signature, which is very, very annoying. And so I'm like, they're going to come on this, and the dogs are going to go crazy. But welcome, guys, to Afternoon Tea. There is so much going on. Even since I posted this, I've just looked at the Cookie Queens numbers, guys, and they are abysmal. This thing is not going to do well. Then we also have some interesting reporting from Jack Royston regarding Meghan Markle's website and the traffic, which I think is definitely worth going over. And then we have Harry and the State Department situation. So that's continuing to evolve as well. And then we have Prince George at Eton. Will they be able to protect him from some prying eyes with cameras? It's going to be really, really tricky. And no, William and Harry's experience is not even remotely comparable. Somebody compared it on X. It's like, well, they were able to do that with William and Harry. And I'm like, 40 years, not 40 years ago, 30 plus years ago, before the invention of the iPhone. Yeah, no, George is going to have a very different experience. So we can talk a little bit about that and what I've seen of other royal children. Then we also have Catherine attending the Earthshot Prize. It looks like very, very, I don't think the palace has officially announced it, but there's been some very, very strong reporting that she is going to attend there in Mumbai. So that'll be her sort of second trip out of the country and second big trip out of the country since her cancer diagnosis and a series of engagements there. And I'm sure there's more, like James being the most, what do you call it, eligible bachelor in the UK. I hate that title for him, but guys, so much to discuss here. So welcome very much. Most of the royals are still on break. So everybody's usually on break until August. So we haven't seen too many royals. I did do a little short about the ladies who attended FEI, which is a world championship like horse show with eventing and jumping and all those sorts of fun things. And so, ladies and gentlemen, just welcome. I hope you're having a super fantastic and amazing Saturday. I was trying to decide what to wear, and it's hot in this room. So we'll see how we do. We do have two here gifted memberships. Teresa Hold'em has gifted one Royal News Network membership, and we have one from Melissa and very specifically Jared as well. Guys, thank you so much. I'm sure somebody in the chat is really going to appreciate it. And we should be having, I'm planning on doing a kind of a watch party. And I think I'll do these once a month. I'm trying to kind of plan out the member schedule for September and do like a watch party with a royal themed movie or TV show. So guys, get looking forward to that as well. And Teresa also sent a super chat saying, hello, hope all you're okay. All been a while since I've managed to catch a live. Well, Teresa, we have missed you. Was so glad you are back. Welcome back here. And we got Carol as well. Gifted one Royal News Network membership. Thank you so much, Carol. So active in our community here. So let's go ahead and get into it. We'll start with Cookie Queens just because I just kind of posted about it on X. So if you guys never followed me on X, I do a lot of, let's say, recent things on X. So if you are curious, feel free to check it out. But I love movies. I really do love movies, or at least I used to before they got really, really bad. And so I am like, it's been very interesting to me to see this box office reaction to Cookie Queens. I have a whole review on it if you guys are curious. And I did want to as well kind of dismiss some, I think, kind of baseless speculation. So some things that we're seeing here is number one, some people are saying that obviously what am I doing? I don't know, because that's not totally my deal. Anyways, but some people blame the girls for how like Meghan coming on board and everything. And guys, that's just not the case. The girls, really, the young Girl Scouts had no control over who became a producer on this film. And to understand the role of producer, what a producer does is that they put money into the production. So movies are kind of a short-term investment policy. So not policy, but like a short-term investment with hopefully a good return. So producers put up money to produce the film. And then they may have some, depending on how much money they give or the arrangement set up, they may be able to have some artistic license over the film. And so then when the film is done and released in theaters or Netflix buys it or whatever, the producers, and there are a lot of producers on Cookie Queens, guys, they all take a cut of whatever the proceeds are minus the production costs. So this is really important because people don't really understand like the insider baseball of a box office. So when they say like Avengers Endgame made $2 billion, you think that they actually made $2 billion. That's not actually the case. Most likely, Disney might have just come out even when it comes to Doom's Endgame. When it came to the Marvels, because Infinity War and Endgame may have taken $1 billion to produce. We don't have the exact numbers because they filmed some in the United States. In the UK, you have better numbers, but they might have filmed some of it in the United States. So, and the production was so high because they have actors who have been contracted for years and years, and they get a cut of the proceeds, and there's and they get upfront fees. So, like Robert Downey Jr. probably got 30, 40 million for Endgame. And for Doomsday, he's like getting 50 million or something crazy like that. So this is just important to understand Harry and Meghan's role here. So in some cases, you have these big budget productions, but because they actually spent so much on it, because so many productions now are hitting the 200 to 250 million dollar mark in terms of production, when you take away obviously what the theaters get a cut of, if you take away obviously the marketing also plays a role here. There's a cost built into marketing. At some point, a lot of films actually, guys, aren't breaking even or even losing money. So they may have a huge box office, but if it took so much to produce and market it, they might come out even or even at a loss. So that's why a movie like Obsession is so interesting, because it costs so little to produce and only $750,000, and it's made 400 million. So those people in that situation made a crap ton of money, and they could like divide it among the producers. And if you're not a producer, if you didn't front the money, because I think it was the director of the artistic director of the film, they came in and they decided to like complain later that they're not going to get a cut of the overall box office. And the guy who made the film, who put up most of the money, said, well, you didn't invest in the financial risk of the film. You're not going to get the financial reward of it. So that's just important. Again, little background here for when we look at these numbers, because I think that's really, really important to kind of see that little tidbit inside of it. So let's look at the Cookie Queen's box office. So this is from Box Office Mojo. Let's see. I don't think it'll refresh. I think the last day is Wednesday the 12th. So this is it. Roadside Attractions is a distributor. So they'll get a cut of the film too. They bought it to distribute it. And the opening was 354,000 in 446 theaters. So that means like I think every theater, if you divide it out, made a little over $100 or something like that. So there's an interesting metric here, which is the number of theaters compared to the average number produced per theater. So this is how many dollars were made in each theater for this film. And as you can see, it's dipped now to barely over 100, or most of the time under 100. So this is just within a week. It actually technically came out on Thursday. Probably Thursday numbers are wrapped up in Friday, which is even worse. But it was on 446 theaters. And on Wednesday, not counting Thursday, it only made $95. On the 10th, on a Monday, it only made 91. It got a little bit of an uptick on Tuesday, but that's because people took advantage of Discount Tuesday. They took an advantage of that to attend the film and save a little bit of money while attending. So you did get a little bit of uptick on Tuesday, but then it's back down into the doldrums by Wednesday. So what do all these numbers actually tell us? And I don't know if anything big is coming out this weekend. I don't think so, because from my understanding, basically all the big stuff has come out already, and we won't get anything new until maybe September or something. But it's not doing well. It's not doing well. In fact, anecdotally, I obviously saw the movie in my local area. So I went to Fandango and go, oh, okay, where are you showing the movie now? Guys, every theater in my immediate location is gone. So I want to say there were 3 to 4 theaters locally who actually shown the film, I think at least one day a week, all those theaters are now gone. They've totally dropped Cookie Queens. So honestly, I initially said when I was talking on X that I could see the number of theaters being lowered to like 200 and something. Honestly, I could see it being 100 or less. This movie isn't doing well. It hasn't made 500K yet. And when you think again about all of the producers attached to this film, Harry and Meghan are only going to get, I would say, in the thousands of dollars for this thing if they make anything at all. They're not going to make 486,000 because again, some of that money comes out of production costs. Let's say a conservative estimate or maybe a decent estimate, production was 100K. Then maybe you have 100K for promotion because you had to pay for Meghan Markle to help promote the film, and I'm sure she wanted to be paid for some of that. Just my personal opinion. Don't know that for sure. So that maybe 100K is gone. So you're already half of what you've made is tied up in production and marketing and distribution. So now you're down to 286,000. Well, the theaters take a cut of that. So you might be down by, half. So maybe you have 150,000 to work with. And then you have 10 producers. If you made 150,000, each of those producers only gets 15,000 if once all the costs or something. Again, these are just general numbers. I'm just literally making them up, but that is what you're looking at. So again, this is not saying this is gospel, just merely speculating. I mean, it could be as little as Meghan made $15,000 from this film. That's how bad this is doing. This is not a blockbuster. And Meghan being a part of the marketing both helped and hurt it. Yes, there will be some people who don't watch it because of Meghan Markle. There will be some people who did watch it because of Meghan Markle. I think the anti-crowd is larger, but there's some people who will just because her name is attached. That's always going to be the case. And I don't know if this film would have been done better or worse because I think overall the story isn't great. It's not told particularly well. I think I even looked at some of the reviews on like Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, and some people were pointing out the same thing I did, which is that it felt very contrived, which it did. There were pieces of it. I was like thinking of the Venn diagram. I was like, this Venn diagram doesn't make any sense here, does it? Like, how can the girl who seemingly is always in an empty parking lot somehow come out selling 2,750 boxes plus boxes? I don't understand. So this movie is not doing well. I think, it's so hard to gauge whether it would have done better with or without Meghan being in the forefront. But I do think part of the problem, and again, part of the problem with Invictus Games as well, is that Meghan is so in the front that people, they react to her rather than the film. Much like Invictus Games, they need to have the competitors out in front promoting it, because if they're interested and engaged in the competitors, they're more likely to watch. Harry and Meghan are not going to do that. And we have basically endless examples, ladies and gentlemen, at this point. Endless. The Harry and Meghan are not good producers. Meghan Markle also cannot act. I don't think either of them have any business being in their entertainment industry at this point. They are both very, very bad at it. I don't think Meghan Markle has a good eye, because part of being a producer is having a good eye for people who tell good stories. The best producers oftentimes are the people, if they're not the ones who can write or direct or whatever, they have a good eye for who can. Meghan Markle just clearly does not have that. She doesn't have that, in part because I think she can't act. And because she can't act, she has never been really engaged in her craft. I don't think she's good at vetting other people either. And some of that comes, again, down to Meghan being an actress, not because she was talented for it, not because she had a passion for it, because if she did, she might go back to acting full time and she might be more successful at it. She did it as an easy, quick route to make money and to be famous. Most importantly, to be famous, I would argue. That's why she went into the entertainment industry. She definitely could not sing, so she thought, well, I'm pretty, I can act. And instead of actually doing the due diligence and growing in her craft so that when the time comes, she can move into all these different routes and have a longer, much more successful career. She didn't. This is why she had to find Harry. She had to find some rich dude to help her continue because she got to the point where, you know what, looks don't last forever. And all of a sudden she's like, I don't know what to do because I'm not getting any roles. I'm imagine guys, her agent told her like you're not getting any offers. Nothing's coming in. You might be able to do Hallmark or something, which is actually a good gig. A lot of people find a lot of success through Hallmark. I mean, Candace Cameron Bure is one example. The girl who played one of the mean girls, she does a whole bunch of Hallmarks type stuff. And they find a lot of success for I would say none of them are Oscar-worthy actresses. Most of them are not great overall, but they found this niche where it works and they love it and people love them and it's successful. But Meghan, she always wanted more than what her talent would allow her to have, and she didn't take the time to make up for her lack of talent by actually working to have a bigger role and influence. There is a way, even if let's say you're not gangbuster, you're not gangbuster, but you know you can do X really well. Well, if you really focus on X, once you know it, you get hired for a bunch of stuff because people need that X role filled, and you become the person everybody asks. There's plenty of actors you can probably think of where you have seen them in a gazillion different guest spots. Yes, they were probably bummed they didn't get and hit the major time, but if they need somebody to act in this kooky role, they get them and it's that person. So Meghan, I think, really limited herself by not actually working on her craft here. And now her movie is crapping out. And again, I don't really think she has anybody else but herself to blame. She thought putting herself at the forefront of some of the promotion might help the film. Again, you can debate whether or not it had much of an impact overall. I think it did hurt. That would be my personal opinion. I think it really did hurt, but she has no talent in this industry. She just clearly does not. She can't actually act in front of the camera. She can't direct. She can't produce. She doesn't have an eye for talent. And I have no clue where she is going to go from here. No clue. Oh yeah, Christine Bransky. Like she didn't really hit the major times until later in her career. But she had a lot of consistent work, but because she was a really good character actress, once you hit a certain age, actually being able to act is a difference between having a long-lasting career and having a career that just stops because you can't fulfill the hot chick anymore. And wouldn't you know it, people need more than a hot chick at some point. You just age out of those roles. That's why the smart people really do their due diligence to try to hone their craft as much as possible. And when Meghan Markle was given that kind of that hint and that nudge, I read this in Tom Bower's book, and I never forget one of her college professors like, hey, if you really want to make a career out of this, go and spend some time in off-Broadway productions, hone your craft, and then move on to the major leagues. But Meghan just jumped straight to Hollywood. And she didn't really care because it was only, again, the only goals she has in life are money and fame. And that tends to go sideways. I think, in my personal opinion, talent and hard work, again, this is not all the time, but talent and hard work and diligence and showing up every day is what moves you to maybe that level of wealth and success that you crave. I mean, my grandparents lived frugally for years and I think are probably quite well off in a way, but you would never guess it by them because they worked diligently, they saved their money, they did all these things, and they're at the end of their life with a lot more success than other people like Meghan who kind of squandered everything. And I think there's a lot of people in the entertainment industry that have seen success. I mean, you know, Meryl Streep is still working. Like a lot of people love her work. And you have Nicole Kidman, although her face is a little frozen, she's had a lot of success. And sometimes they can step away, but Meghan just needs some mega bucks. And when you're driven solely by greed and fame, those people tend to crap out because they never did the hard work. Money, I think, often follows hard work. Not all the time, but oftentimes. And she never figured that out. She always wants us to take the cheap route. And you just see so much about how everything has happened for them because the only thing that has been truly successful for them, truly, is the Harry and Meghan reality TV show about them, and more specifically about the royals, and Harry's book, also about the royals. This Cookie Queens movie, if I was Meghan and I was doing this and I saw the initial cut, I was like, okay, my note is this girl looks contrived. Do we not have a girl we followed who did not meet her goal? What did that mean for her family? How can we show the realities of this? And how can we maybe kind of mine a bit of the underbelly of this industry, which I feel like they kind of miss, which made the documentary, I think, much less interesting, to be quite honest. So, anyways, this is my assessment of Cookie Queens. Do I think it's going to break box office records? No. Is it going to be? We'll make a prediction, guys, right now. I think this is going to be. Let's go radical here, and you can double check on Box Office Mojo. I think this weekend the number of theaters that are showing Cookie Queens will be down to 100 or less. That is my prediction. 100 theaters or less, because that all the theaters in my local area are gone, I think speaks big volume. That the closest theater I could find is 40 plus miles away in a totally different city that would take me hour and a half to get to easy. That's the closest theater now. Tells you everything, doesn't it? It really does. It really does. So that's just my thought and assessment. And we've had so many guys super chats and memberships come in. So let's see if we can get through these, because obviously we have so many stories. So let's go ahead. We have Carol said, just got my Queen Elizabeth Life and Style book. That is awesome. I have it as well. We have Mystica Rose gifted 5 Royal News Network memberships. Why, thank you so much, Mystica. And we have Melissa and Jared giving 10 Australian dollars. Why, thank you so much, Melissa and Jared. I am really hoping Catherine and William make it out to Australia next year. That's kind of my goal, because I would like to get out to Australia. So Carol Merlick says, Princess Iman welcomed twin daughters today. Hi, Princess Iman is the daughter of Queen Rania. Yes, Carol, thank you so much for the super chat. I mentioned this today earlier on RNNX. So yes, very exciting news for the Jordanian royal household. Although I will say, probably, I do feel for Rajwa, because she is the wife of Crown Prince Hussein, and they have had a daughter. And there have been now 3 other daughters born to one of Hussein's sisters. So I'm sure that the kind of the pressure is on to find a male heir. Now, it is interesting in Middle Eastern royal families is that while it can go through the family line, there is preferential as well. So you can actually choose who inherits. That's kind of interesting. Saudi Arabia also does that as well. Diz fan, thank you so much for the super chat. Said, hello, Brittany. Any tips for some family members who will be visiting Scotland soon? I told them to keep an eye on anything royal wise. Yes. So when it comes to Scotland, I mean, I love Scotland. Edinburgh is such a nice city to walk around in. I really enjoy it. Obviously, they do have Whittard hot chocolate there. So if you're interested in some great hot chocolate, you can check out Whittard. And then they also have Knoopes there as well. So it's Knoopes. And they do hot chocolate and cool chocolate. So it's like hot chocolate that has had an ice cube, and it's so good. And you can choose whatever percentage of hot chocolate you want. One of my favorite things. So obviously you can get some great shortbread as well. There is a great shortbread like that I found that was my favorite, and now I can't remember what it is. It's not the Walkers. There's something different. So yeah, definitely check out a couple of different shortbread options. Walker would not be my favorite. Obviously, go to the Palace at Holyrood House. I think that is well worth the tour. It's quite interesting with Mary Queen of Scots. Obviously, you can go up and see Loch Ness if you want to. Usually there are day trips up there. I think that's kind of fun. So if you're going to head out there, obviously you want to make sure you have a rain jacket too, because you are likely to hit some rain, but it also might be warm. So it depends on the weather pattern. Maybe want a rain jacket with no added warmth and some with, and good walking shoes. Always when you're in Europe, don't go, well, I'm just going to wear these cute ballet flats. Your feet will die. Your feet will hate you. get some really good walking shoes. That way you can walk all day with really no pain. That is what I've done now. I actually went to a shop particularly that could fit me for some really good shoes, and it's helped me a lot. I mean, I have feet issues overall. I broke my left foot like 20 years ago, and so I have a lot of foot pain. And so for me, having good walking shoes is very, very good. All right, Diz fan says, I've seen photo signs outside Eton College where George will be attending. And I'm wondering how Catherine, William, and Kensington Palace plan on protecting George and be prepared for the mania around George, just like there was with his father. So we will definitely, thank you so much, Diz fan, for the super chat. We shall be getting to that question here later in the broadcast. We also have Melissa and Jared again gifted one Royal News Network membership. Why, thank you so much, guys. And Teresa Holtum gave a 10-pound super chat saying, myself wouldn't watch even if Meghan wasn't involved in it, but I do feel bad for the girls in the film because Meghan Markle's involvement will put people off who are interested in the film. Yes, it definitely will turn people off, which is just, again, kind of sad. And Diz fan, this is a continuation with the super chat, the stories about questions about Eton. How does that differ from William and his Eton days? Seems like the pressure was on both William and Harry at the time because of their mother. And also said, seems like we're dealing with social media versus tabloid press at the moment William was at Eton. So thank you so much, Diz fan, for all of those many questions. So let's go ahead and get into that particular, since we're looking at it. Let's go ahead and get into that story. Now, I haven't actually read many of the articles. All I know is that there is a sign now outside of Eton that says, and we're just going to pull up People magazine here since it's convenient, that says no photography. So Eton is within the city of Windsor. So like if you go up top of Windsor Castle and there's a tower you can go on top of, if they have that tour open, I have done that tour. So I was actually looking out over at Eton. So it is, so if I was up in the tower, it's kind of towards, if you're up in the tower, I don't know which direction that is, but it's towards St. George's Chapel. And so they have put these no photography signs out by the cobwebs. I feel like we're getting some spooky Halloween vibes. Anyways, so they are attempting to obviously avoid, because Eton is connected to Windsor. Windsor is a big tourist town, trying to avoid people kind of gathering to take pictures. And I would argue that this is not totally the problem. The problem is the smartphone. So what is so different from William's time compared to now George's time is the invention of not only the smartphone, but the increasingly good cameras on the backs of the smartphones. So my camera, obviously I have a phone here. This does very well. Now, in distance shots, it doesn't do quite as well, but I do have big honking cameras that do extremely well at long distances and take a lot of pictures very well. And so that is like, I would be able to get a shot from quite far away. So they definitely don't want people bringing photography. My understanding is that you can even rent rooms on Eton campus when the kids are out and stuff. So that's something that people have done. They've like stayed at the school as basically it serves as a hotel. And that they may sort of diminish that this year because of that. But the big thing is not only tourists, because tourists might wander around, those sorts of things, but everybody has a smartphone. So even if you are in an event where like nobody should have quote unquote cameras, as in paparazzi style cameras or general photography cameras, everybody has a phone. So George's challenge in this day and age, as it is with basically all royal children, is that there's a challenge of how do you keep privacy when even kids document their lives so much on social media? Because it's not just the members of the public or the press or anything like that. It is also just the desire by children and stuff to catalog their lives online. You see that a lot with kids. And some of it you could argue, again, there's so many philosophical issues that we could argue about when it comes to cameras and kids and social media and everything like that. But the reality is there'll be a good chunk of kids on that campus that have a phone or something like that. So let's maybe look at the article a little bit. So the no photography signs have been seen around campus. The signature includes individual signs on fences as well as no photography warnings added to other signage that warns students and visitors, please keep to public footpaths only. The school's commitment to privacy is one of the reasons that William and his wife, Catherine, ultimately landed on Eton as their top choice. They have been very careful not to pressure any of them to appear on the public stage too often. It's been a gentle introduction into royal life, which has led George to build his confidence. That's what Queen Elizabeth's former press secretary, Alyssa Anderson, recently told People. So they don't have too many, looks like, details here or anything, but this will be sort of the ultimate challenge. There will be a lot of challenge here in keeping George's privacy. And it might be as well that because of the environment and that like everybody is basically the child of a wealthy person, the advantage there is that they all want to guard their privacy. And so they will all probably do that. Now again, they might introduce a policy with limited smartphone access and those sorts of things at Eton, and that might be possible, but there's always going to be somebody who finds a way to skirt the rules, especially when it comes to kids. There's always going to be somebody who is willing to skirt the rules. And let me just double check something here really, really quickly. No, whoops. Hold on. So I came across an Instagram account and I was like very some ways hesitant to follow it. But there was like some sort of royal kids Instagram account. And no, that's not it. And it was really interesting to see a lot of these very candid pictures of the royal kids, and there are pictures I had never seen before. So hold on, I did find it. I won't share it just because yeah, underscore. Oh, it's still active, but the profile is private. So, rare royal photos and clips. And I came across quite a few pictures I had never seen of the royal kids. And one of them was there was a party at one of the schools where Princess Alexia was going in the Netherlands, a lingerie party, and she was part of that. So I knew about that story. There have been clips of Alexia that have popped up on like TikTok where she's dancing and lip syncing with her friends. I think Isabella has popped up on some of that too, and Josephine of Denmark. And so the thing is, the royal kids, they do pop up on certain kind of Instagram accounts, but they don't generally make it to the papers because the papers can't really afford to print them. It would be considered an invasion of privacy, and there are definitely privacy laws when it comes to kids, but that doesn't mean that through friends and friendship circles that photos don't go through the rounds. That's 100% definitely possible, something that happens. So that's just something to keep in mind, that even if it's not a paparazzi, even if it's not a member of the press or the public, friends will share pictures. Friends will take pictures at different events, and those will make some of the rounds too. Maybe not as the public rounds, but they do make the rounds. So I did think that was something just interesting to point out, is that they can do the best they can, but George is living in the digital age much more than his father and his uncle ever were. And so he will not have the same level in some ways of privacy, or be able to control the privacy in the same way his father could. They will do the best they can. Eaton will do the best it can, but there's just really no way to fully control the situation because you just can't control every phone. I mean, guys, even I have 2 phones. I got 2. So I have double the I have the double of the possibility of having things. And I have 2 phones, guys, because one of them, this is my work phone, this is my personal phone. I have that because I have so many pictures. And when I travel, like I'm on a family plan with my family so I can have my business expenses for travel on here, but this is my backup in case something goes wrong. So I have this to get me around Europe and to keep all the pictures on, because I have 100,000 plus pictures. I have a lot because of how many screenshots I've taken during research and all these sorts of things. So I think Eaton will do the best it can, but the reality is there's just no way really to fully control the environment. There's no way to kind of avoid certain things. Now there was an interesting instance because I did cover this and I got the video and I didn't share it and people got really mad at me. I screen recorded it, but there was this guy who was like stalking William and the family when they were riding their bikes up in Norfolk, and William got into like a bit of a, I would say, confrontation, but it was just like a kind of a heated like, why are you here? What are you doing? This is private property. Like, you need to leave, and that sort of thing. And so I do have that. That was an interesting thing that did hit the internet because the guy uploaded it to YouTube and it was up from there for a while and eventually taken down. Because of the privacy laws, I think they do have the ability to minimize a lot of that, but that does not mean, guys, that pictures won't get circulated, stories won't get out. Like, they will get out in one form or another. So I would say better believe that it will 100% happen. And I think the thing is that the media will do what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to operate and not share. But the thing is, guys, and I talked about it a bit on the video that I did yesterday, sort of about the kind of the dumb snub story, which is not a story, is that because now of social media and YouTube and X, and that people are able to have platforms, it's entirely possible that somebody, in order to get a leg up on the competition or whatever, they find a picture and they end up sharing it or something to that effect. Not everybody, because they're not beholden to the same kind of media laws as the media giants are, they can do different things that the media couldn't. And this is part of the dynamic and the sadness of the collapse of mainstream media. Mainstream media has earned its bad reputation 150%. Obviously, vet everything, know who's talking, know what their bias is, how they will report things, and then you can vet and verify the information. But the reason I do lean a lot still on the mainstream media is that they do have to go through a vetting process. So I learned this as well in my little newsroom, where one of my coworkers was a lawyer and he goes, I put something as fact in an article and he's like, no, 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 you have to say allegedly, because we can't really prove it's a fact. We know it's true, but you can't prove it's true. Ergo, you have to write it this way. And that's always really stuck with me. And it's like that little kind of nugget in my ear from my old boss, basically like trying to temper things. And I had to have people who tempered other things. And maybe sometimes I could use that a bit more. Sometimes somebody go, you know what, you really shouldn't do that. I try to temper myself, but you have those people, editors, lawyers, who vet things, and that's actually a good thing. And I think people, because of the advent of social media and everything, there's a proliferation of misinformation. Like the quote attributed to David Foster saying he didn't really know the couple that well, wasn't going to go to Lily Betts' birthday party. Guys, that's totally made up. It doesn't exist anywhere except in a, obviously, like a junk news website. No one else has reported that. And you know why they haven't reported that? Because it's not true. And yes, sometimes the mainstream media doesn't report things it should, but at the same time, there's reasons sometimes it doesn't. Kind of like if you're really positive, and there's a great comparison here that might be just worthwhile to remember, is that if you ever watch the documentary on Netflix called Crime Scene, Death at the Cecil Hotel. So it's about the woman who climbed into the water, it wasn't water treatment, but it was like water collection for the building. There were these big tanks on top of the building, and she had died in there, but they had video of her acting really, really strange around an elevator, and people just went on endless speculative things about that, and they started blaming certain people and going after certain people on social media, claiming that, oh, this person must have done it. Yes, Bobby, you're right, Australia, Alyssa Lamb and stuff. They went after and hounded people for things that were not their fault. And at the end of the day, it was discovered that basically she was just kind of having a psychotic break. She had bipolar and she was sort of off her meds. And bipolar, it's been interesting because if you watch a lot of the disappeared programs, I notice a lot of times the people who quote unquote disappear are bipolar. There's obviously something that just kind of cracks in certain people after a while. And she was having an episode and she was trying to get away from something and climbed up into this tank and fell in and then couldn't get back out. Very sad, very, very tragic. But people had twisted that into such a knot and a frenzy. I don't even know if some people realize that they kind of determined that she accidentally killed herself and that this guy who did like a dark music video at the Cecil Hotel had nothing to do with it, but they had like gone after and doxed this guy and all these sorts of things. And that's because when it comes to vetting, there's not as much of it on social media. People don't do it. And as a result, misinformation proliferates. People come to conclusions they shouldn't, and they attack people or they dox people or they go aggressively after people. And it's really important to keep a level head. Otherwise, you end up in mob mentality. And mobs, guys, they never go well. They just never go well. It's just something I want to really, really caution people about because I think it's just a really good idea to keep in mind when you're seeing information because a lot of people will say they have sources or they're reporting truth or whatever. And guys, I would say 50+% of it is just simple hogwash. Like that's sort of the thought. So, anyways, that is my thoughts there on George at Eton. I wish him all the best. I hope he is protected to the best of the ability, but we will get stories that come out. We will get pictures that come out. That's just probably really impossible in this day and age to avoid it. But I think most of those will end up on social media, less so in the mainstream, just because the mainstream media can't publish those for good reason. And they do want to keep a good relationship with the palace. It's how we get the best information is those who are actually connected to the palace. Do they tell us everything? No. Do I think Tom Sykes has a pretty good gauge on what's going on and not being reported? Yes. He's one of the few who I think actually does. And so that's just again something definitely to keep in mind. All right, guys. Now over to Meghan Markle and the as ever numbers. So I used to do so one of my former jobs, like I have a master's degree in history, wasn't quite sure how to use it. I started this job I started my like first quote unquote big girl job as administrative slash research assistant. It was actually just administrative research assistant. So I did a lot of admin things and then I did research for the vice president at the time. And so I at that point I was like trying to figure out, let's say, how to grow in my career. And I had gotten kind of close to the I wanna say at the time she was like the manager of comms or something, and I think she's the vice president of comms now, I'm not sure, she might have moved up, but, I had gone close to her and I had jumped ship to the communications department. I was in sort of different department and I moved more towards comms, and in that role, I had started out helping with somebody's social media, and then I kinda cycled out of that, and oops, I knocked my camera, and then I moved to a different role. And one of the things I did, and one of the things I taught myself is how to look at Google Analytics, how to see how people are operating on the website. How can we make the website more efficient? I was so proud, guys, one time when there was this like janky bit of code on the website in terms of how the text lay. I cannot code, guys. I should be clear. I can like bold and italicize something and make paragraphs, and that's about the extent of my abilities. But I was so excited that I figured out how to fix the text on a page once. I was like, yes, that was my greatest achievement. So I find this analysis of websites quite interesting that Jack Royston is doing. Not to say that everything he does is like gangbusters or great, but I do think he does a good job. I think he's interesting, more interesting than some are, to be honest. And I like some of this and I dislike some of this, and I'll go into what I think. But this is Meghan Markle's as ever traffic. Again, don't forget to lowercase the e web traffic compared to other royal websites. So he's kind of like he's one of the few I think really engaged in trying to figure out how well as ever is doing. Kind of like me, but we're in different veins. Oh gosh. Newsweek, guys, it keeps crashing. So Robbie says Jack Royston, it confuses me. So Jack Royston's interesting, and I'll just get on my, let's say, I don't know if it's soapbox, but here's my perspective on Jack. I didn't pay much attention to him until maybe the last year or so, maybe 2. And I know a lot of people claim that he is pro Harry and Meghan and he was before and that's why they don't like him. Yada yada yada. But what I do, guys, is I really try to look at and understand that somebody may have a bias, but I really want to look at what they're saying. I will not dismiss somebody based on their name alone unless they're Omen Scobie or Rob Shooter or a couple of others. I've been pretty clear about my perspective on Rob Shooter. I think he's just shooting a bunch of air, is my opinion. And Omen Scobie, guys, we all know he's an absolute hack. But anyways, Rob is sorry, Jack is one of the interesting guys here because he, I think, does try to toe the line. Here's the thing. I think in especially the royal space anymore, it's honestly become quite toxic where people don't really even understand that somebody is actually trying to see things from both sides. And that's why they're not just blindly following one thing. They're actually trying to measure both sides of the argument. That's what I try to do. I know that's not what everybody tries to do. And honestly, I think the kind of the more radical side against Harry and Meghan is gaining steam a bit because more people are somewhat moving in that direction and not really and the more measured responses, because measured responses, guys, sometimes those just don't get as much attention or appreciation because people want or have been trained to think of the radicalized rather than the more kind of baseline. So Jack is an interesting one to me because I don't look at everything he does, but I do think he's doing his own thing. And I think he has a pretty good eye on what's kind of sort of going on and looking at things differently. And I think the one thing that really annoyed Jack was the African Park situation. It really annoyed him. I think that's why he's turned a bit more negative towards Harry and Meghan is because they wouldn't address that. I think that ticked him off. I think he was like, okay, you guys stand for this thing, and there's this really big thing here over in the corner, and you're not doing anything about it. And I think that annoyed him. And I think that made him look at things more critically. And there's nothing wrong with that, guys. I'm all for somebody who looking at and they get more information or maybe their perspective is challenged and they adjust as a result. Those are people to value, I think. Not somebody that's so bullheaded that nothing you say or do ever changes them from their position. You want somebody who is able to have a strong stance, but also is able to adjust as new information comes in. They're not somebody so bullheaded that they never see outside themselves or their bias. And I think Jack Royston is one of them. I think Tom Sykes is a good one as well. I know not everybody likes Tom Sykes, but I do think he actually has a good gauge because he's actually been in the Royal Rota. So he actually has seen and heard things that most of the YouTube commentary space at this point hasn't really seen or heard because they weren't part of they have never been part of the Royal Rota. And so he's had connections and there's things going on publicly and underneath the scenes, and there is definitely a path within, I think, the palace that doesn't want to address certain things and wants to avoid them. Like Tom Sykes has talked a lot about kind of the tensions between William and Charles, which I believe are 100% real. I believe it. I don't think they're close as they were back in 2022. So anyways, that's my perspective. And I think I appreciate people, and I would always argue and suggest kind of listen to people who are try to be balanced, try to not because I worry because I see so much, especially with social media, radicalization and so much misinformation. And so I always would encourage you to think of people that are able to adjust, report the facts, give their commentary, but are try to be fair. And so I find this article really interesting. Again, as somebody who's spent time looking at web analytics for my own company. And so it says Meghan Markle's online shop gets more website visits than King Charles's Highgrove Gardens shop, but significantly less than the royal family's main website. So I say all that. And I think, honestly, the comparisons here are quite dumb. Now, the Highgrove one makes a little bit more sense, but Highgrove is quite expensive to ship here to the United States. And the United States is a huge market. And so to compare it is like to compare apples and like kumquats, like or like watermelon and kumquat. Not that the UK market isn't big, it is quite big, but like compared to the population size, the UK has like I want to say 66 to 70 million, something like that, and the US has 330 million. So Meghan Markle's obvious market is at least 3 times larger than Charles's. So like again, you can go to Highgrove House and or Highgrove Gardens and you can get something from them, but it's going to cost you a lot in shipping. At least that was at the time when Meghan Markle was introducing As Ever a couple years ago, people would talk about it, those sorts of things. So it costs more and people are just less likely to lean on it in the United States. So it's I don't think a good comparison. And he says significantly less than the royal family's main website. I will be honest, guys. I've mentioned this a lot. I really hate the royal website. It really sucks. From a website perspective, it sucks. It doesn't work well. It's clunky. It's outdated. It doesn't actually give you good information. It gives you kind of bad information. Well, not bad, but it doesn't present it well. It's not user friendly. It's overly clunky. And Megan's website, honestly, for As Ever is also overly clunky. She should streamline her website because her website looks like something a photographer would do. It's actually not all that good when it comes to purchasing. A website for e-commerce should be very different than a news website. So their construction should be quite different. And I think Megan's, it's kind of like hard to see things sometimes. It's hard to gauge things. So I think her website sucks. I think the royal family's website sucks. I can't say anything about Highgrove because I don't go to the website, but I hardly ever go to the royal family's website, even though I think they've given more information about like the Edinburghs and stuff on there. They don't give any information about Catherine or William really. So I think the Brits really need to rethink their website. I think the Scandinavians had the best websites, in my very humble opinion, because I'm able to find everything easily. I'm able to find like editorial images. Like the Brits should have an editorial image page on their website so people can use approved editorial images. Like, anyways, I despise the royal website. It's very bad. So, anyways, none of those comparisons are very good, to be honest. So they need to compare it to something like Goop. As Missy Lulu says here, we have Giada. I'm not sure of her name, to be honest. We have Kristen Cavallari's, Katherine Heigl's, Reese Witherspoon's, Paula Dean. Yeah, they need to go with more, I think, good comparison. So I think the comparison is quite bad here. But some of the other information here is interesting. So it says the Duchess became a lifestyle influencer in 2025. And so an As Ever spokesperson actually told Newsweek. So he was writing this piece and they felt the need to respond, which I thought was, again, quite interesting. It says comparing As Ever's website traffic with royal websites is probably not an especially meaningful comparison. Like I said, guys, it's actually not. But it's the rest here that gets weird. As Ever is a consumer business where the more relevant measures are customers, repeat purchases, and sales rather than raw website visits. Somewhat true and somewhat false here. Traffic naturally rises around launches and then settles as the initial curiosity subsides. The focus on building a sustainable brand and loyal customer base are not about chasing views. Or said not chasing page views. Okay. So, really interesting little metrics here. So, number one, yes, when it comes to a consumer business, you want customers, you want repeat purchases, and you want sales. I would argue you want customers and repeat customers, not repeat purchases. Because purchases to me seems empty. You want customer loyalty. That matters more than anything else. If you are a dedicated customer for life, you will order as often as you want to. Like I am a pretty loyal customer of Lisa Eldridge. So I don't buy everything, but if I do lean on her, I buy something else again. Like Kitten Mischief is my favorite lipstick. So I am wearing that today. I wear that often. It's always here on my desk. So when they were going to raise prices, I even bought a couple of these because it's like, it's my favorite. So I want to keep it handy. And But sometimes I go maybe 6 months to a year in between purchases, but I'm still a loyal customer. Probably the thing I purchase the most consistently and haven't really wavered it on at all is a Chanel Le Volume mascara. It is my favorite mascara. I buy it all the time. I don't feel like it clumps very much. I feel like it gives my lashes volume and I like it. So guys, I have been purchasing that thing. I want to say for 15 plus years now since they released it. I have tried other ones. I still go back to Le Volume. I'm a consistent customer of Chanel Le Volume mascara. So, that matters because it's like the customer has a good experience and they want to come back. They're just not purchasing for more. And obviously sales. But raw website visits, guys, that does actually matter. You can't just dismiss and go, "Oh no, we don't care about the raw website visits." I mean, I understand because in some ways it's just like me. I just look to see what's next, or I'm like looking to double check something, or I'm showing something on the website. So I'm actually on ads ever quite a bit and like never purchased anything, which definitely screws up their metrics 150%. But you want people to want to visit your website. And what I think we're seeing is that people just don't want to visit the website anymore. There's not a consistent raw website visits because there's no reason to really go on there. One of the things as a hostessing business that Meghan Markle should be doing this, she's not, is actually giving people advice. Like if you are a hostess with the mostest, as Meghan Markle claims to be, why aren't you giving people advice? And one of the things I actually found interesting when I was thinking about this yesterday is that she has this tag on her website, "You're beautiful, full stop." And I was like thinking there for a second, going, "Oh, no, 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 no. Wait, wait, wait. This is a brand that's supposed to be about hostessing. Why are you talking about your beautiful full stop?" That actually matches more with a jewelry, fashion, or beauty line. That doesn't actually mesh with her branding at all. It's actually a bad little brand thing. And guys, again, I love dissecting as ever as a brand because I find it absolutely fascinating. But this is a horrible tag actually for her brand. But what she should be having here, which she doesn't, is a tab that says tips or practices, or and it should be like a weekly newsletter of things that you can take. I'm just watching her psychotically pick unripe blackberries and like what is there's one video here, a bit of the video that I haven't really seen before, like this. Like what is this? She still looks like she's like if her, I don't know why I'm thinking maybe of like Shanghai Noon or something like that. She reminds me though of like a Chinese person working on the American Railway. That's what that outfit reminds me of. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This is like I hate this outfit so much. And honestly, this is really distracting. The video is really distracting. So when I mention that the website isn't designed well, I don't like the how when you move over things like the picture changes. I find that confusing. I think she's wanting to go for elevated, but honestly, I think it diminishes from e-commerce. And then you have to go down here to add it to your basket, which I think it for some people is kind of sort of confusing. And let's I don't know. You should make things pretty simple for people to buy because then wouldn't you know it, people buy things that are simple to buy, if you know what I mean. So even luxury things. I don't know why I went in this direction, but if you're thinking luxury, here we have Louis Vuitton. I just searched the website or whatever. Look, place in cart right here. Like that's so easy. And hers is like way down here, totally like blends into the background. So how do you know where you're supposed to like buy it? It might be confusing to you. Oh, and if you go like this, it goes away entirely. It's not a well designed website. So it does have issues there. And also to get people consistently on the page, get them to stay on the page, get them to purchase, she should be adding, of course, more suggestions and tips. But at the same time, this is a level of tip we're getting from Meghan Markle. Level of tip. Meghan's hosting notes, guys. Clip a few fresh flowers before guests arrive. Even the simplest arrangement can make home feel ready for company. think it should say the home instead of home. Explore hosting essentials at asever.com. And she's capitalizing the E here, even though she doesn't actually in the brand, which drives me bonkers. Drives me nuts. Anyways, so this is like no duh. If you're an idiot, maybe this is like something you haven't heard before. I think her, s- wouldn't you know, at some point, somebody made a joke. Oh, hosting notes like candles before guests arrive. So the room feels warm when everyone walks through the door. Place them at different heights and keep the scent subtle so it blends naturally into the room. Like, do you honestly think, Megan, that people don't like candles when people come over? Like, it's such bad advice, so I understand why she's not doing advice, and then sh we have a this was from an email, we have a charcuterie board, another charcuterie board. Gather around the table with pantry favorites from As Ever. All you added, Megan, there was that little like, you had the wine and the brute, and all we have is raspberry spread. That's all we have there. That's actually from you, and then we have a branded cheese knife thing that I don't think is going anywhere. Anyways, all that to say, guys, As Ever is abysmally bad at every aspect of its business. So let's go back to this. So raw website visits, I think that's actually a good measure because that means people are active and engaged in the site. And they're basically saying that they don't that the raw website visits probably aren't great. And they're kind of acknowledging that. And that they're not focused on that even though they really, really should. And then there's traffic naturally rises around launches and then settles as the initial curiosity subsides. So I feel like that is a reflection of the entire brand. Is that yes, the initial curiosity, there were a lot of people on the website. But now that's faded. And so we're in just a sustainable point. We're trying to build sustainability, which means that they're not stable. Gosh, sorry, the website crashed again. And why they are not stable is I did a whole video on it earlier this week. If you guys haven't watched it, you really should because I follow As Ever. I do it obviously for research purposes and stuff, which I think is about half of its audience. What I've noticed is I am getting As Ever ads every time I open Instagram, which means that Meghan Markle is paying tens of thousands of dollars probably. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but definitely thousands of dollars to get As Ever in front of as many eyes as possible. And so she's putting so much As Ever out there. She's sending more and more emails. The emails are just continue to be banal and nothing. And to me, that reflects is that things aren't selling and she's trying to do more advertising to get things to sell, and they're just simply not selling. That's my theory, and I'm sticking with it. And so I think this Jack Royston piece reflects that. I don't think she's getting a ton of website visits. And her website should be doing better, probably than High Grove House. But again, that's just because of the difference between the UK and the US in terms of the potential audience size. But is it that much different? I'm not sure. But I think the brand is seriously, seriously struggling. And she has a massive glooming expiration date on the brand, which is her products. She very, again, stupidly went with consumer products that expire. Like that knife that she showed in that charcuterie board could last forever if stored properly. You can sell that for 10, 20, 30 years. But the rest of the brand has a shelf life that diminishes by what, next year or something like that. It's just not going to go much further. I think she's going to have a really, really hard time. And I don't think what she's introducing is helping. I don't think any of it is all that inspiring. I think people are checked out. And mostly her website's visits are from people like me examining and seeing what other typos we can find because there have been typos, there have been launch fails and like so many different things. Like this woman is abysmally bad at running a business and a website. And if I was her, I would redo the website to make it more consumer friendly rather than what she has done and just like so many things. But she is, I think, definitely struggling to sell. And that's a big issue that she's going to have, I think, now and in the future is the inability to sell her products. She's got a lot of them, and I don't think they're selling particularly well because she doesn't know how to sell them. Food products are different because I think especially with premium, you have to show how they're useful in a recipe, especially if they're a bit an unusual product or something else is readily available in store. You have to actually show their usefulness in a different way than something like, my cross necklace. I can still show you how it's beautiful and well designed and everything like that, but food is a bit different, especially when your competitors are a third of the price available in the local grocery store. You're asking people to go above and beyond, and it's struggling to prove. So, anyways, that was the interesting bit, I think, there. And then we also have here Prince Harry and versus the State Department. So, this is from the International Business Times. I was going to do Newsweek, but it keeps crashing, so we'll do this. It says U.S. State Department withholds 18 documents concerning Prince Harry and Freedom of Information case. So it was determined that a lot of Harry's immigration stuff could remain private, but there's still stuff on the ongoing Freedom of Information case with 289 more records still under review. So the US State Department has withheld 18 documents related to Harry in a fresh twist to a long-running Freedom of Information Act battle over his visa records. Court filings show the department identified the batch in late July and chose to keep all of them from public view, citing privacy and immigration law exemptions, which kind of makes sense. To recall, the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, first sued the Department of Homeland Security seeking Harry's visa application, arguing Americans had a right to know whether he was truthful about his past drug use after he detailed it in his memoir Spare. That case was lost when the U.S. District Court Judge Carl Nichols ruled the Duke's privacy interests outweighed any public interest discourse. Heritage then launched the second Freedom of Information Act suit in 2025 against the State Department, this time asking for all other records it held about Harry apart from the visa papers themselves. The think tank's aim remains to test whether Harry was honest in his forms and whether he should have been allowed in the U.S. at all, given that prior drug use can bar entry of many applicants. So, I mean, this is a long-running case, and some people think Harry's going to be kicked out of the country. Like, I just highly, highly doubt it. I don't think really anybody wants a political mess of that. But I do think that how Harry is officially here, I think, is important. And the reason that's important is that Harry and Meghan really like to engage in politics. They're not, let's say, full front in some ways. Like, they're not really generally advocating for one particular candidate, although they kind of sort of advocated for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. But they do subtly introduce and push certain policies. And as American, given that he's a foreign entity who we don't really know all that much about in some ways and has had drug use and obviously is in a mental health crisis and not speaking to his family, which is another potential video idea for sure. I think we do have the right to know somewhat what he is, like what status he is here and on. I think if he's going to live here full time, he should become an American citizen. And the waffling him and Meghan do backwards and forwards over and not being clear about certain things is again for them to obfuscate certain things, and they want to avoid scrutiny. So I don't think we'll probably get much movement on this case because he does also have the right to privacy. But if he's interfering in political matters like that, and he is the son of a head of state and is using the authority that he has, again, in his own mind, as the son of the head of state, like a former head of state, like we do deserve the right to know that. I think he should not be doing that. And I think it should be clear by the administration, hey, you are here under our good graces and you need to follow our laws and you need to avoid certain things. And I think that would be a good lesson for Harry and Meghan to learn. But nobody wants to push them too much. Again, partly because of the Charles angle, to be honest, guys. Sometimes they don't want to push him because of Charles. They don't want to offend Charles. They don't want to cause extra difficulty. So they avoid certain controversial subjects because of that, which is frustrating. I think we can all say that that's potentially a frustrating situation. But I don't know how much movement at the end of the day we'll get on this particular case. But I don't want him here on a diplomatic visa, because if he's here on a diplomatic visa, guys, that disturbs me because that means he's not able to be prosecuted on certain things. And if he's living here full time and has no job with the UK, absolutely 150%, he should be here on like a normal green card or something. He does not have a special talent. He has no talent. Him and his wife have both proven endlessly they have no talent. But also, I just think there's a lot of danger in not knowing where Harry stands, giving Harry and making him think too much about where his position is and those sorts of things. And I mean, part of it though comes from Charles as well. Charles should be appallingly clear to Harry where he stands. I feel like Charles is weak. I feel like Charles is somewhat, for some inane reason, thinking he wants potentially Harry and Meghan back in the fold. And so he's kind of waffling. And it's just all over the place. So, anyways, it's disturbing. Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. So, Sharon just announced. So, guys, I did a video last week, and I actually just posted it on RNN Clips yesterday, very late yesterday night, that the Meghan Markle of academia in the UK, he has been found dead, guys. So that is very, very sad. Very sad. He has been found dead, unresponsive at his address. Very sad. A spokesperson for the Metropolitan Police say, sadly, a 41-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene. His next of kin have been informed and are supported by officers. At this time, his death is being treated as unexpected, but is not believed to be suspicious. The case is being investigated by officers from the Met's Central South Command Unit. A final will be prepared for the coroner. So this is a sad outcome to this case. See, there's just so much. It's so awful. He's the one who plagiarized, yes. And here's the dichotomy here. He deserved a lot of the criticism he got. And it's I would imagine the outcome of the focus and the critique and everything. But at the same time, it's like, I think when somebody concocts a huge lie about themselves, they can't totally live with it, and the realization that the lie and the chaos that they've surrounded themselves with, that nobody believes it anymore, and so they think that's the only way out. I mean, this happens to, although it happens very scarily and sometimes in relationships, where somebody concocts this huge lie about themselves, only to when push comes to shove and they're finally there's no outcome anymore, and they react unfortunately quite in towards their partner. And so it's, you didn't want it to come to here, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you don't investigate people as well. You can't just totally be, gosh, it's so hard because it's like you got to be real, and you got to give people, I feel like, some, well, not give people, but I think there's lessons that people can glean from things. And I think the lesson here is, don't make up a huge lie about yourself. You can live in the fantasy for a while, but the fantasy always cracks. It always does. And I feel so sorry for his family. And I feel so sorry that it got to this point. But what he created around himself was, I mean, they even came out with articles today, talking about how, according to schoolmates of his, he claimed he was mute until he was 12. And his classmates are like, I don't really remember that. And so he created these delusions, I think. And the bad thing is that people didn't call him on it. So he was able to grow the delusion to such an extent. He grew it and grew it and grew it and grew it because nobody called him on it. And he was like, I can just keep telling lies and lies and lies and lies, and I can create this amazing career. But when your house is built on sand and lies, it will eventually fall apart. And unfortunately, I there's always redemption. The one thing I absolutely love about the United States is we do truly believe in redemption stories. There was always a redemption, but I think part of his problem is he just didn't even want to. It could have been as a result of his autism or whatever, but he didn't really even seem sometimes to like want to say, like, if people pushed him, like he would freak out. And it's like, but you can't like develop these lies forever and not have somebody figure this out. So again, this is just profoundly, profoundly sad. I wish this is not the end to the story. I was hoping that there might be a redemption arc, but he couldn't even admit that he had lied. And that's kind of the scary thing, is that he couldn't even admit he had lied. He would, blame other people for what they were finding and stuff like that. And so I would say yeah, Riley's right. What a tangled web we weave when we first practice to deceive. Sad all around. He could have learned from this. Yeah, he could have. And maybe he had to make amends and he might grow from it, but I think he took the way out that he saw, and that's sad. That shouldn't be the case. But people supported his rise. They gave him influence that I don't think he deserved. And I think his ego and narcissism grew with it. And it ended in tragedy. That won't be the case with everyone, but I think there's definitely a lesson to learn here. So very sad. Thank you for letting me know that, because it's just so bad. And I just think it's so bad that it got to that point where he was just so untouchable for a while. And I think just the whole house of cards was going to collapse. And what's sad now is that there can't be a reckoning of going through and looking at everything. Hopefully, maybe they still go through, because I think it's important to know what he was attached to, what he was reporting, and stuff like that. And there is an investigation that needs to happen into Cambridge. Just how did this completely unqualified guy get into the position he was? How did he get through his dissertation research without being questioned about plagiarism? Because again, I've done academic rigors somewhat at that level, and I would hope somebody would call me out, because that way I could learn. Oh, you should have cited this. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me learn better. Let me be better. Because unfortunately, he's not going to learn from this lesson. But I think it consumes so much of his whole life that when the facade broke, it broke him. And he wanted to be the person he believed he was, not the person he is. And I find that to be very, very sad. One of the things that's best for us is humility, realism, and if you can't accept that, I think you will find yourself in terrible, terrible situations, and tragic ones, as in this case. I really was hoping that would not be the outcome. Very sad, for sure. Very sad. All right. So I don't have an article pulled up, but we will talk about this real quick. And then I have one other Meghan Markle thing I wanted to get to. But real quickly, it has been strongly reported that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, will be going to Earthshot Prize in Mumbai this year, which is in India. I am glad she is able to travel. I'm really hoping for, because we haven't had very many British royal tours. I'm really hoping we get one in 2027. This might be an opportunity for Catherine and William to go to kind of, feel things out, kind of get back into the groove, because we do need them to be able, because when state visits happen, when royal trips happen, they do bring a lot of goodwill to different countries and different relationships. That's what sort of state visits are. Catherine and William, as they're not the monarchs, aren't doing state visits, but they do official visits, and those all offer a lot of help to the British in their various dynamics with other countries, which is what state visits do. Can you guys hear Pippa? She's barking out there. And so I think I'm really glad she's going to be able to go, because it was actually interesting looking back at it back in 2023, because I did think it was odd that she did not go to Singapore with William. And they cited at the time not Megan's. They cited at the time George doing some tests. And I kind of understood that, but also I just thought that was a little weird, because I'm like, well, I understand he has tests, but all kids have tests. So like you can't totally miss out on trips due to a kid's test. That just seems a little odd. Sometimes, part of growing up is being self-sufficient. And so I thought it was odd. But I think now looking back at all of this and knowing now of the cancer diagnosis, the surgery, and everything, I think in late 2023, because usually Earthshot Prize is around, what was it, November? I think she was having health issues and they were probably trying to figure out what it was. And she was probably doing some tests and diagnosis, and she did not feel comfortable traveling, especially such a long distance in certain circumstances. It was, they decided that way. And George probably did have his test, but it was convenient to go, well, George has a test and she needs to stay home to help him with his test. And that way they would also have a good reason. And that was the reason why they gave, but I think it was really because Catherine wasn't doing well. And that was probably our actual, I think, in my opinion, first indication that things weren't going particularly well for Catherine at the time. Because I'm sure, again, how they described the surgery, as they described it as like sort of scheduled. I can't remember the exact wording. That there was a schedule for his surgery or her surgery. So they were kind of like, okay, so the surgery is going to happen. It's planned, but probably planned again, like within a week's time or something. So I imagine they had been navigating for a while what exactly the health issue was. They were trying to get a treatment plan together. And they obviously didn't want the public to know anything until they really knew something. So I'm glad she's going. I will not be going to Mumbai. I'm sorry. So being a woman traveling by myself, I don't always feel comfortable doing that in certain countries, especially with my equipment. India would probably be one of those. And so I am going to stay home. And I'm honestly hoping to maybe cover Monaco National Day this year. We'll have to see how things turn out. But that would probably be where I would go in November, if anywhere, because I kind of there's a couple things before the 5th anniversary of RNN that I would like to cover myself in person, Monaco National Day being one of them. Then I would have seen 9 of the 10 reigning royal families in Europe, with only me missing out on the Spanish. I need to see the Spanish, and then I will have all 10. And I feel like before RNN's 5th anniversary, I need to see all 10. I need to see all 10, and then I can rest and say I've done all the things I need to do. So, anyways, guys, that is most of the main things. And then there was this one interesting article. I may do a whole royal fashion news article on it because I did think it's kind of an interesting question. So I guess Meghan Markle, the butterfly earrings she wore, which were from Princess Diana, because as a reminder, Meghan Markle got all of Diana's worst jewelry, basically, out of the collection, which I feel like, except for the aquamarine cocktail ring, which I feel like we can all appreciate. And so apparently she wore the earrings, and Princess Diana, where is the picture of Diana? Oh, they had taken it off. Diana wore those earrings back in British Columbia also as well in 1986. So Meghan Markle kind of repeated very much like royals do. And the question is by, who is it? Richard K. is she trying to stake a claim on Diana's legacy? And it's like, yeah, Meghan is. Meghan is. I think because she has nothing else. She has nothing else. She is not somebody who can create a legacy on her own because she fundamentally, I think, is so incredibly insecure in so many ways that she cannot fully be herself, ergo she cannot fully embrace the dynamics she could have, the legacy she could have, because she's so the weird vibes of both being extremely narcissistic and extremely insecure at the same time, constantly battling that. She has to glom on to somebody else who's been more successful. Meghan Markle, I think, desperately wanted to be Diana. I think she desperately wanted to be Diana and be as beloved by her and everything. And the public's just like, you know what? No, we just really don't care. And I think that was really, really hard for her. And the choice of jewelry, again, to connect the relationship, I think I feel so much differently about it than I do Catherine and Diana, because Catherine has never ever tried to be Diana, Whereas I think Meghan has actually tried to be Diana or be Diana-like or whatever. And Catherine has, to her immense, immense benefit, has just really tried to be her own person. And I think it shows. I think it shows. And one last quick note, James is now going to be attending university. So James, who is the Earl of Wessex, who's Prince Edward's son, he'll be attending university. He'll be learning like estate land management and stuff. So he can maybe manage royal lands and stuff when he's older, which would be kind of cool. But I hate how the press is calling him, particularly the Daily Mail, Britain's most eligible bachelor. Like, guys, he's just 18. I think you can cool it on the bachelor thing. And George will be there before you know it. So just wait, because George will actually be the most eligible bachelor in the UK. I don't know if you can actually say James is. James is lovely, of course, but I don't think he wants that title that puts a lot of pressure on him. He's just an 18-year-old kid. Let him be 18. But guys, those are all of my thoughts. And we do have one super chat here. We have Philippa Hussein 7778 who gave a £2 super chat. You are always fair, Brittany. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Philippa. I appreciate that you appreciate that, because I think that's really, really important. I try to be as fair as I can, as honest as I can in how I see things. Do I get it all right? No, I don't think anybody ever does. But guys, let's go ahead and get over to all the chat here. And Is Amen says, wait, what? He's now the Earl of Wessex. Explain, please. So yeah, his father, Prince Edward, after the death of Queen Elizabeth, it had always been promised that he would be elevated to the title of the Duke of Edinburgh. And that took I want to say a year or two for that to come into play. And so he became the Duke of Edinburgh. And because of that, because of his elevated title, that initial title of the Earl of Wessex went to James. So James got an upgrade. And so now he is the Earl of Wessex, which is kind of cool because it's actually a very, very old title. And we could have had a dynasty established by the Godwin sons, who at one point was the Earl of Wessex before William the Conqueror came over. So Kat Shank says a mimicry is a hallmark tactic associated with narcissistic personality disorders. Yes. And it just doesn't come across as real, which is why it doesn't work for Meghan. She will not be Diana. She will never be Diana. She just needs to give that up. I just don't think she will, because she doesn't have anything of her own. I mean, this is someone who couldn't even figure out what career path worked best for them. She's still trying to figure that out. Princess Goose says, James is super cute. I could probably be a younger grandmother to him. Aw. Parcheesi says, Parcheesi too. Meghan is just mentally ill. Harry, I feel, is too. The royal family just needs to stay far away. I don't think they're mentally ill. I do think, in particular, Harry, I think is more mentally unstable. And Meghan is just she's just this kind of desperate D-list type who just wants to do anything and everything to be famous and loved and all those sorts of things. Carol said James just finished his work on the Sandringham estate as a farmhand. And Riley says the Edinburgh children seem very down to earth. They do. Kubrick says James is so much like Prince William. He is a little bit. Maybe he'll keep his hair. That'd be cool. Catherine says when Prince Edward was elevated to the Duke of Edinburgh. Yes, answering the question. Clifford says it is good he's not taking a gap year. He has been working at Sandringham this summer. Tam said, thank you, everyone who posted well wishes for my Tuesday surgery. Oh, I hope it went well, Tam. Carol said, it really couldn't come into play until the Queen had passed. Marty says, do you believe Meghan actually owns Aquamarine or was it loaned to her? So here's the interesting thing. It's hard to say. I would imagine it's probably technically owned by Harry, but Meghan gets to wear it. But I'm not entirely sure. If he gifted it to her, she could demand anything of Diana's in the divorce. I don't know if that'll happen, though. I don't know. It depends. Technically, the jewelry of Diana's that Catherine's wears should technically belong to William and Harry. I actually kind of hope both of the boys technically own the jewelry. That way William can go, if Harry and Meghan divorce, William can demand, it's our mother's jewelry. We own it. You do not get to keep it. You have to give it back. So we'll see. And I do need to do a whole, gosh, I have a lot of fashion videos in mind of Meghan's disappearing wedding engagement ring yet again. Somehow it has disappeared since February, not to be seen. And she's wearing this big gosh darn one on her right hand. Guys, I really just do think she hates her engagement ring. It was never big enough for her. It was never the style she wanted. So we definitely should get into that. Parcheesi says, okay. I don't care why they are beyond that now. The family needs to stay away. And Princess Goose says her personality isn't Diana. She is not British and she doesn't look like Diana. Fetch isn't going to happen. No, it's really not. Angela Dawn says the Diana pose Meghan did with the white shirt and sunglasses and the collar before dating Harry was the first red flag. It was. And how she did, and Diana did that once. Like Meghan, I think, has done an excessive probably studying of Diana, hoping to capture that magic. And I just don't think she will. Kat Ching says, Harry, for one thing, I diagnosed him with a prolonged grief disorder. Yeah, I think grief has played a huge role in Harry's life and not to his benefit. Coastal Angel says, I think Harry found someone will cosplay his mother for his personal gain. Harry's going along with this too willingly, and Meghan will do anything for fame. Yeah, I mean, honestly, though, I think some of it is like Harry, I don't think totally realizes what Meghan is doing. I'm sure William does, and I'm sure other people do, but I just don't think he fully does. He strikes me as a very dim man. MBJ says, I don't think she owns the aquamarine ring. We wouldn't see it again. Kubrick says Meghan Markle continues to be a bad D-list actress. Why, yes. Yes, she does. Is Amen says, that's March birthstone. How dare she wear it? Carol said, I think Diana's personal jewelry was split between William and Harry. Yeah, so, like, of what they could use, I mean, again, we don't know the exact details of the ownership. Riley's USA says, Edward and Sophie seem to be much more creative than Harry and Meghan. They've actually had some success. Not all, but they found it hard to do half in, half out. Now they are fully committed to being working worlds. Yes. And they did step in it a time or two, but Sophie ran a successful business and Edward was very creative. And so they were able to do those things quite well. Princess Goose says she doesn't own the aquamarine ring, but it's considered part of the Diana Spencer estate, which doesn't include Meghan. Yeah, I would want to say that even though they split the jewelry, that technically it's owned jointly between the brothers would be my guess. B Wings says, I really think Harry has a diplomatic visa because he holds the title of Counselor of State, still holds titles, and in the line of succession, this might be the reason the government protects him. Yeah, which is, again, quite disturbing because, again, he could break laws on our soil and not have to deal with any consequences of it. And that's not right. He's here in a total private capacity. And again, another reason why the titles need to be pulled. Clifford says Meghan manipulated Harry and kept saying Meghan is like Diana and wanted the Spencers to accept she was like Diana. Very true. Very true. Meghan's quite deluded and Harry's quite deluded too. Tam says, I agree. Did Harry ever say if he Googled Meghan? I don't think he did. I just thought of a rude joke. I was like, does he know how to use Google? Delane Flory says, hi, all the way from South Africa. Hello. And Clifford says she would not inherit the jewelry that belonged to Diane. I really don't think so. I agree, Clifford, which might be why she's trying to gain as much jewelry on her own as she can. Carol said, this is why I have so much respect for Edward and Sophie. They made mistakes, acknowledged their mistakes, and became working royals and capture the public's respect. Aaron Dell says, do you think when William becomes king, he will definitely take Harry and Meghan's titles? Some people think he will. Others think he won't because he's too kind and lovable. Honestly, William does not strike me as the soft, fluffy kind of guy. William has I think, a vision for the monarchy. I think he is uncompromising in that vision. And he is not soft in the way his father is. I think William is more decisive. I think William probably takes that more after the Duke of Edinburgh in that direction. And so I think if there is somebody who's going to do it, I think William is the much more likely possibility than Charles. I was kind of hoping for a second there that Charles would. And I need to do a whole video on this because I think, again, people have forgotten kind of like looking at the long trajectory of things. And I've definitely been guilty of it too. Really looking at how Charles has handled things. And I do not think he'll strip the titles. I don't think he will. I think he's going to keep the possibilities open and everything. I think that's just going to be Charles. Riley's USA says, Chelsea Davies stories from her brand are so much better than Meghan's. So much more genuine behind the scenes footage. You become more invested in her brand as she believes in hands-on versus fake Meghan. Yes. And I do have a video I filmed actually probably over a month ago now. I need to get done, which I think will be perfectly in time. There is an Aya sale coming up. And I do want to share it because I think it's a really good example of what Chelsea has done is I think her initial vision for her brand didn't work. I think she like I don't think she was overpriced, but I think she did really quality work and had to price her stuff high, and I don't think people bought. And so instead, what she's doing is she went back to the drawing board and went, okay, you know what? I'm going to go lab created. I'm going to make my jewelry really affordable. She kind of has moved away from her initial Africa angle because her initial angle was Africa. Everything was going to relate to Africa. That's why she called it Aya. That's why she had tusks as a big portion of her jewelry designs. And she's moved completely away from that. The only stuff she has left is the stuff that she produced and hasn't sold yet, including one emerald ring, which I would love to have with real emeralds. It's really stunning looking. And I'm like, I really want that, but it's like $5,000 or something. I'm like, well, maybe it's part of the sale at some point. Maybe one day it can be on the wish list of something. So I think if Aya is much better positioned, and what Chelsea did was go, my initial idea didn't work. That's fine. I stepped away for a bit. She had a couple babies. Like she didn't do much with the brand for like a year or two and then came back with a completely different vision and revamped the brand. That shows, I think, a much better business head than Meghan Markle's thing, which is like try to beat a dead horse to death again. And that's what As Ever is. Baseline 1989. Thank you so much for the super chat ask. Her narcissism makes her think she can portray others people's personalities better than they did and doesn't understand why she doesn't receive the same love. Not getting it is not getting it's the authenticity people loved. Yes, yes. Like because Megan's trying to be somebody else and not herself, it reads as fake. And she's not even a good actress. So she can't even act well like somebody else because she can't act well in the first place. Like, girl, if like you actually took stock of your abilities here, you would know you can't act. I've seen Meghan Markle's acting. It's bad. It's really bad. There's a reason why she didn't get any other roles for things. And so if she could have accepted that and like not tried to emulate somebody else, she would be in so much better place. But she can't. And so she's kind of failing out. But thank you so much, a baseline. We also have Kat saying, oh my goodness, I'm reading that she legally owns Diana's replacement engagement ring since it wasn't a crown jewel, but a personal gift. Yes, so she was given it as a personal, so like the 2 stones in her ring, she could keep those. But I would argue that those, if they were taken out of something else, are pretty innocuous in the first place. So like to me, I'm like, who cares? But basically every piece of actual important jewelry is owned by Catherine. Well, I wouldn't say owned, is owned and controlled by William 100%. And so that's fine. The other stuff that's more trinkety, not as nice, is Meghan's. And there may have been a time where the boys might have shared their mother's jewelry a bit more, or William might have been more willing to, let's say, and Catherine to share, but it's like they're like, we're keeping all the good stuff. We're just gonna give you guys the crap stuff, which is what Meghan's has. It's not all that impressive. Poppy Tool Love Star says, sheesh, just cringe mockery, cockery of Princess Diana and Lady Diana, Queen of Hearts, Legends, and Legacies, darling. Coastal Angel says, Wallace was pictured looking out the window too at Buckingham Palace. Meghan studied them very well. Tam said, I think I read that Harry told the Spencers that Meghan is just like his mom, and they disagreed. Everybody disagreed. Everybody disagreed. Yeah, he went around and I think told a lot of people that, and they're like, no. But he married her anyways, even though everybody told him not to. He did it anyways. All right. Marjorie says, Prince Harry cannot let himself believe that Meghan fed him a load of lies that would just finally destroy his fragile mental health. Yes, I think that's part of it. Sarah Kwasnica says, I'm sure Meghan hates Chelsea Davy. Harry's probably not allowed to talk about her. Yeah. Although technically, the last time I looked, I think she still technically follows his Instagram account. Princess Goose says, Diana was 18 when she became princess, and Meghan was like 35 when she became a duchess. When she imitates Diana, she's imitating a child that could be her daughter's age. It's super silly. Yes, it is. Great point. Kat Shanks says, oh, I'm a little frozen here at this moment. But we'll see. Kat Shank says Meghan owns the aquamarine ring as a legal personal gift from Prince Harry. He legally gifted it. Okay. If he legally gifted it, then it is hers. He might be able to fight for it back in the divorce. But I mean, the aquamarine ring was something she bought for herself. It's not really, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's not, let's say, huge historic importance compared to what Catherine has. So I think I'll have it to be quite as many issues. Trying to find where we were. Fabulous says Diana's replica jewelry is all on sale for a few pounds across eBay, Amazon, and other sites. Meghan could buy from there. Very true. Lady Saucy Ming says, wait, has she worn the aquamarine ring? If she had it, she would have been worn it by now. Yeah, she's worn it a couple times. Not often. It's very, very big. Riley says Meghan replaced her ring, which is part of the history. Early sign everything was disposable to her. Very true. And then we also have Baseline 1989 for another super chat. Thank you so much. Said Harry and Meghan are the perfect storm of children whose fathers spoiled them rotten out of guilt of them not having their mothers. Oh, that's so true. That's so good. Yeah, Harry and Meghan have, in some ways, quite the similar story. Stacy says, Brittany, could you consider doing an intro on your lives? I watch on TV and always miss the beginning because of so many commercials. Thank you. Yes, I do need to figure that out at some point because I do have so much video now from my personal, like, royal watching things. I would like to do an intro video showing that stuff, but I haven't had time to get to it yet. Yeah, Kat Shang says, Meghan first wore the ring at the wedding reception. She did. Princess Goose says the Cambridges didn't have to Google Meghan because they probably already did after they were huge Suits fans. Yeah, maybe they were, but I don't think they are now. If they ever were, I think Harry lives in a very big delusional bubble. Riley's USA says Meghan cares more about how things look instead of the sentimental value of things. Yes, Sharon says that's a good thing. Amaya Baker says Meghan obviously doesn't like her engagement ring. She wanted the one Catherine has. Yeah, she's basically completely reworked her ring multiple times now. She really hated it. It was not her style though at all. And I you can't help but wonder. I mean, sometimes guys just don't get it right, but it's like Meghan would be the type of one who would really want you to get it right. And she would have no problem telling you she hated it. Sabrina says, but that child would go back to bare basic Prince Harry, which is worse. Perhaps. Kubrick says, after Kris Jenner, Martha Stewart, and David Foster fiasco by Harry and Meghan, I think their future invitations are going to be limited. I think so too. Kat Chang says, if it makes sense to him, I think William will remove the titles. If it doesn't, he won't. Seems pragmatic, doesn't suffer fools. Well, see, I agree somewhat, but honestly, when it comes to Harry and Meghan, they become such a problem that you really do have to remove the titles because I think the reality is Harry and Meghan are probably going to end up in an Andrew situation. Not the same type of one, but will they, in their pursuit of money, especially as money gets tighter and tighter, will they follow somebody who's nefarious in one way or another? Probably. They'll probably get caught up in something somewhat like, not exactly like, probably not as bad as Andrew, but they'll be caught in something similar. And so you almost, as a protective measure, have to enact something so severe because it is the only way to protect the future. Because at this point, Harry and Meghan have proven that they're loose cannons. They don't listen and they may risk the entire institution, and you just can't do that. Amaya Baker says, Harry's the type of person who went to therapy and now dwells on every negative thing brought out by therapy. Yes, and there are obviously, guys, a lot of articles, if you haven't seen, about parental alienation being fueled by therapists, which I can definitely see as happening with Harry and Meghan. And I actually was familiar with this. I read an article back in 2022 about it, and a lot of it stemmed from politics in some ways. So there was this one story. It was really sad. Like this couple would not let their kids alone with, I think it was his parents or something, because they were Trump supporters. And ergo, because they supported Trump, their children could no longer be within the presence of their grandchildren. Guys, that is idiotic. That is idiotic, really unhealthy. You should be able to have conversations with people who disagree with you politically. That happens within families and those sorts of things. You should not cut off your parents just because they liked Trump They disagreed with you on a couple of things, and it's like all of a sudden now they're persona non grata. They can't touch your children. There's just so much wrong with that, and there's obviously other situations where it's like full on cut contact with parents and family, and that's because there is in this culture, and we see this in television and film and stuff, this idea of found family. And that, oh, you can find your family. You can build your own family. Now, if you're building your own family in the sense that you married someone and building a family with them while keeping the ties with your extended family, that's one thing. But to totally cut your family off is really unhealthy. And we see this connected with Harry and Meghan. So I need to do a whole video on this, particularly with Harry. But your family, to be honest, they know you best. And so if they're telling you something you're doing is wrong or unhealthy or whatever, yes, some people are abusing that right, but most aren't. And sometimes just like typical parenting is now being smeared with this label of toxicity. It's like, no, I told you you can't go out with your friends at 11 o'clock at night when you're 17. And somebody goes, oh, no, you got to cut your parents off that they did that to you. That is so horrible. How dare they do that to you? No, no, no. They were being parents. And yes, sometimes your parents will disagree with you. They'll hold you to account. They'll counsel you. They'll tell you what you're doing is wrong. And that's parenting. That's not necessarily bad as some people are portraying that it is. It's a perversion of the truth of what parents do, which is parent, they lead, they guide their children. But some people get that extremely twisted. And it's frustrating to see. Right, and we did have a super chat come through here. It's a KN Kareen. Thank you so much for the super chat. Said, did you see the news today on Professor Arday? I did. We covered it a little bit. I just feel profoundly sad that he felt like that was his only solution to the situation. I believe anybody can have a redemption because I believe obviously that Christ redeemed my sin. So how can I stand there and say that nobody can be redeemed from their situation in this life? I think he could be redeemed. I think he could have could have had a great redemption arc. And it's sad that he felt like ending his life was his only way out. But I think there is also a role that other people played in overly propping him up based on the false narratives that he spun, that they fueled and contributed to creating such a mass, I think, self-delusion on our day's part and such a massive, like, kind of conspiracy and web of lies that when that lie was finally exposed, he just couldn't live with the consequences of that. And I find that to be insanely sad. I don't wish that on anyone. And it's just such a horrible situation. I mean, I hope people learn from it on multiple different levels. So again, just as a rehash, Jason Arday, Dr. Jason Arday, was a guy who had this insane story that he was mute until he was 12. He only learned to read and write when he was 18. Yeah, he got his PhD and was the youngest professor, a Black professor in Cambridge history. But it came out as people investigated that his dissertation was likely highly plagiarized. A lot of his articles were highly plagiarized. And plagiarism is the ultimate sin of academia. So that basically means you copied and pasted. What he did and what I read was, he would change a word in the sentence or something. So it wasn't like a word for a word, but he would barely change it and not correctly cite. You can't do that. That's plagiarism. And so he did that. He was spinning tall tales about his charity efforts and stuff that were not true. And so he spun this whole series of lies over basically every aspect of his life. And as his book came to publish, there were some people going, no, 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 no. For the sake of academia and the future, like, you have to be truthful about things. Like, this guy, his story doesn't make sense. Some aspects of it are not true. He plagiarized, and you're putting this guy up on a silver, on a platter, or sorry, not a platter. You're putting him up on, a platform and giving him this voice, telling people he's a guy of authority, basically giving him these huge roles and whatever that he didn't actually earn, and most likely was placed there as a reflection of tokenism. And that ended up, I think, in a terrible situation that people fueled him in creating the delusions that he did for himself. And I think he was extremely sensitive to those delusions being cracked. And that's what happened. People investigated, like, there was even a police investigation opened into somebody who was merely asking questions about his credentials. Like, that should not be happening. So lots of things there. Very, very sad. But I think the lesson here, if you want to call it that, is that, I mean, there's again multiple lessons that people shouldn't allow people to, I think, concoct narratives. Do your due diligence, because I think if somebody had stopped him earlier, we wouldn't have gotten to this point. I think if somebody had been able to call him out earlier on some of this, he may have been able to learn and adjust rather than it getting to such an extent that it became a national scandal. And the pressure of that led him to make a terrible decision. So, anyways, Amaya Baker said Dickie Arbiter says part of the reason the Queen would not let the Sussexes half in and half out is because of how it didn't work with Sophie and Edward. Very true. Very true. Missy Lulu says, I've always wondered if William gave Catherine the golden pearl heart pendant necklace that Charles gave died when she gave birth to William. I'm pretty sure Catherine has it. I imagine she would have a title, a piece like that, especially one so connected to William. Sabrina says they will not take the titles. They will go to Wallace Simpson route. I don't think so, because what people forget sometimes is that, yes, you can make some comparisons between Edward and Wallace and Harry and Meghan, but the big difference is Edward was king. Edward was actually legitimately a king for about 9 months. So you cannot treat him in the same way you do Harry, because Harry has not and will not be king. So it's much easier to do than you might think. Marjorie says, I believe both the king and Duke of Edinburgh talked to and trained William. He knows the role of the king entails. They knew Charles would be an interim king with a few issues. I really don't think so. I mean, again, you could not determine how long the queen would live. I just think it's part of Charles's personality. And there are certain personality things you can't kind of train out of you. It's been interesting. I've been reading a book on Rasputin, and it talks about Nicholas II. And Nicholas II, the Tsar of Russia, reminds me a little bit of Charles. He was a little weak. He really liked nature, and he didn't quite know how to. I don't know if this is quite the case with Charles, but Nicholas definitely did not understand how to rule an autocracy like Russia. Led to his downfall. Monique Don says William will definitely yank the titles. I honestly think he will, because I think he's going to have to. And again, you have to do it to, I think, avoid similar issues with Andrew and Sarah. Deline said, did Meghan really wear a fake Diana ring similar to her royal Catherine's engagement ring? No, the cocktail ring Meghan wore on an As Ever video is totally different. It's totally and completely different. Coastal Angel says Meghan's acting got Harry. Riley's USA says, you hear that William has a temper, but usually passionate people do. He might have a temper without taking it out on others. Harry didn't like the stories like that because he partied and never had responsibility. Yeah. I mean, we have heard that William has a temper, and Charles has a bit of one too. But according to Valentine Lowe, who highly respects his royal journalist, he would say that Charles would kind of blow up and then apologize like immediately or within a short period of time. So A. Cognilo says Meghan already did Hallmark, FYI. She did. But like that is, I don't even know if she's good enough for that, to be honest. Tam says, I feel really sorry for Harry. It was obvious that he put so much thought into Meghan's engagement ring. Everyone who watched the engagement interview saw she didn't like it. No, yeah, she did not like that ring. Sir Squirrelot says, I understood the Queen stepped in and ordered Diana's major jewelry held as the Princess of Wales collection as a sideline to the royal collection. That is why there seemed to be a lockdown on it. I'm sure that was probably somewhat true, because some of it. So there's differences, because some jewelry Diana was given as a gift on behalf of the crown, kind of. So there's certain pieces that always belong to the crown, but were given technically to Diana that she could wear. Now, with the interesting question here, guys, is when it comes to Meghan, Does she outright own the diamond earrings that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia gave her, the one who ordered the assassination of the guy in Turkey? Or does the crown own them? Does Meghan own them outright, or are they owned by the crown? Because she has not worn those since. Although she has that big cocktail ring, and I would have to look because maybe she took some of the stones from that those earrings to make the cocktail ring because those earrings are kind of considered sort of kind of blood diamonds because obviously he ordered the assassination of somebody. Royally Fruit says Princess Amalia question here. Queen Maxima is a consort queen, but still she's called queen. When Amalia marries, would that be her husband's title? So he would be like prince consort because you can't have a king consort. King consorts don't exist. There was actually a famous instance with Prince Henrik of Denmark where he was marrying Queen Margaret and he wanted to be king consort basically. And they're like, no, you can't have a higher because king is a higher rank than queen. So prince and princess is equal. Duke and duchess is basically equal. But when it comes to the monarch in particular, you cannot have a king consort. So Amalia will marry the guy will be a prince. He will be a prince consort. He'll be called prince. Nobody really uses consort in titles. So he'll be prince consort. But great question. Great question. Baseline says the audacity of Harry to believe Meghan didn't know who he was, but that his brother knew who she was. Yeah, that's a good point. Princess Goose says, I'm not saying the Waleses don't like popular TV shows, but Suits was well watched in the UK at the time. Well, that's good. Yeah, it might totally be right. Kat Ching says, it's so sad. It would be sentimental to me if a guy designed something. Could be the ugliest ring, and I'd love it. Yeah, I think Meghan hates that ring. I think that was not what she wanted, was really hoping for something else. And she was like, and honestly, some of the settings in it I thought were pretty old school and just not to her style. So again, I'm not really surprised. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up here in a minute. Too Old to Care says, is there anything King Charles can do before he dies to stop Prince William from removing the titles? If he amends the letters of patent in some way, maybe. But I don't know if I don't think he would. I think he would just leave it for William to figure out. Alma Sky said, people that invite them to get publicity for their films or charities are somewhat also shady. I mean, they might be, and they just also might be really not reading the room, really not understanding things. But do you want to bet the bottom to dollar they will never get an invitation from David Foster again? Yes, that's true. And it's not because maybe he doesn't like them, but because in his big night, it all of a sudden got totally overshadowed by this inane nonsense story about a quote unquote snub. I mean, again, to me, guys, why would he snub a woman he personally invited to the event? Like, that's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. And so he didn't snub her, but because the toxicity around Harry and Meghan is so incredibly rife, he got smeared with it. It disrupted his event. Now, his event, which was a great achievement for his charity, it's self-sustaining now for many years into the future, got totally overridden and overrailed by this little nonsense story. And it simply exists because people don't like Meghan Markle. Some people, in my personal opinion, exaggerate and make things up to fit a narrative, and people go with it, and the mainstream media, to their high discredit, perpetuate it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just insane. Darlene says, I feel so sorry for those children. They seem to grow up alone. So we don't see them in other circumstances. So I think it's really hard for people to say, oh, they're growing up alone. You don't really know that in some ways. Like, are they seeing other family members? No, but yeah. Eric Sania says, so basically you think because you have a F, your offspring are liable to you? I don't get what you're supposed to mean. So the idea is that as parents, you raise your children, and your children, if they are raised well, should have a level of respect to you. And as your children grow older, you to them in different ways. And there's obviously the commandment in the Bible, honor your father and mother, and you'll live a long life. It's kind of a good thing. And it's disappointing when either parents or the kids shun each other. Sometimes that is done for legitimate reasons, but those are the very minor of cases. It's now become, "Oh, you don't like my lifestyle. Oh, you like a different politician than I do." That is insane to me. You should be able to agree to disagree on certain things. If you can't do that, that's on you. That's an obvious problem that you should get some help with, but you should be able to have conversations. That is what healthy adults do. Healthy adults have conversations and agree to disagree and get along most of the time on certain things. If you can't do that, sorry, but that's an issue. Princess Goose said Lori Loughlin sinned by the USC sports scholarship. She's done her penance and now is acting again. Yep. The great thing about the United States, guys, is that we strongly, strongly believe in redemption. And I think that a lot of that does come from obviously our Christian heritage. I mean, Europe has a Christian heritage as well. It's just manifested a little bit differently. And I think American, it was about entrepreneurship, the drive to succeed, and these sorts of things. And we just had that pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Not that's not always possible, but we had that drive, and so we want to see people take accountability. That's the thing I think I've never actually seen from Jason Arde is actually he taking any accountability for his lies. And I think that was part of his, I would argue, some of his mental health issues is that he could not acknowledge his failings and it manifested in a horrific way. And it's sad. I wanted to see him come back, acknowledge his faults, acknowledge where he failed, and go, I am so sorry. I feel like I've deceived people. That wasn't my intention, yada, yada, yada. But he chose the route where he can hide from accountability rather than face it. And that, I think, tells you in some ways a lot about a person. Ilgio says they're both horrible combinations of stupid and lazy. Absolute recipe for abject failure, despite the more opportunities any of us could hope for in a lifetime. Yeah, there's a lot of truth there. Sarah Kwasnica says Meghan would rather embarrass herself than not be noticed at all. There is some truth there. There is some truth there. Bobby said, oh my goodness, he does. Nicholas II and King Charles, that is. His father, Alexander III, did not teach his son how to rule, then died before he could do so. Yes, that was like in the first part of the book. I've been finding it really interesting. I meant to bring it over here when I did my live stream and then I forgot. But it's more about kind of the story surrounding Rasputin and his impact and stuff. It's not a biography. I would like a flat out biography on him, but this is more of a investigating the mystique of Rasputin. So Sir Scroll Out says, yes, Meghan owns her wedding gift jewelry and the gifts from Harry that belonged to his mother. That's why Fergie kept the York tiara. The York tiara, though, is a different case. So again, if a different country gives a royal a gift, oftentimes those are technically owned by the royal collection. They are not individually owned. The person who was given them obviously has full individual access to them, but depending on how the gift was given, oftentimes it is technically owned by the crown. So that's the interesting question. Mari Hernandez says Cookie Queens was showing at, I believe, 4 different locations in my area, Tulsa, with 4 time slots in each place. And now it's only showing 1 cinema with 1 showing a day. Yikes. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Honestly, I think I need to adjust my assessment. I think, again, less than 100 theaters would be my guess. We won't know until, let's see, Box Office Mojo. I don't know when we'll know, but probably not until this weekend how many theaters drop. I don't see Roadside Attractions probably being really glad with how things went. Baseline says 1989, the 10 commands sent to honor them. It doesn't say you have to love them. But love is part of honor, I think. And sometimes there's a pastor I really liked called Vodi Bachman. He passed away last year, I think it was. And he would say, love is an act of the will accompanied by emotion that leads to action on behalf of the person or the object. So love is an act of the will. You don't always love people all the time in the emotional sense, because I'm sure husbands and wives who have been married for a long time, there are tensions. But love is an act of the will accompanied by emotion. So if you force yourself in some ways to love, the act of will results in emotion. And so if you the act of will accompanied by emotion, I think that's so key to remember, because people divorce sometimes. They go, well, I was in love once, but then now I'm out of love. I don't feel it anymore. And Yeah, sometimes you won't feel it anymore. I think that's 100% true. But when you think of love as an act of the will, not just as an emotion, but an act of the will, then you will, I think, have longer relationships than somebody who just goes just dealing with the emotions. Because the heart is a fickle thing. Emotions can be erratic. You need to think with your head. And I think that's really important. Maggie says, the Bible also says parents do not anger your children. It works both ways. I mean, I would have to see the exact passage and the context, but I'm sure it's not just as a parent, you will anger your children. You will tell them no when they want you to say yes. So does that mean you always say yes when they want to run across the street, when they want to jump off the cliff, when they want to do crazy things? You will make your kids mad if you tell them no. So I'm sure there's more context there than just quote unquote making, you don't want to make your kids angry. You will make them angry if you discipline them. They will resent you, but they will also come to love you because that structure provides love. And the respect does go both ways. And so it needs to be this is a complex dynamic. But the thing is, you are asked and told to honor your father and mother. And if you do that, you shall live in a long life. And that is the promise. Baseline, thank you so much for the super chat. Said, I agree with you about the commandment. I just mean that parent-child relationships are up and down. But even if you don't like/love them, you are commanded to honor them. That's how my pastor explained it. That's a great way to explain it. Sometimes you don't like them. Sometimes you might not love them, but you still honor them. And that is really, really important. That is really, really important to keep in mind. To really keep in mind because otherwise, again, you have this situation where kids are constantly not speaking to their parents, going like cutting off relationship and these sorts of things. And this is becoming very common. It's been covered in the media quite a bit. And I don't find any of that to be healthy. I don't think that should be seen as healthy. There are only very, very extreme circumstances where that would, I think, be appropriate, like extreme abuse circumstances. And just because your parents say, hey, I love you, but I don't like the decisions you're making in your life. I think any loving parent would say that. Why wouldn't they say that? Would your parent love you if they just endlessly indulge you? I don't actually think that's love. I don't think that's love because love requires a level of discipline and boundaries and these sorts of things. And some people just don't want that. Don't want that. So, Hot Mess Express Virginia said, I had a really bad relationship with my parents. Never felt emotion for them, but I did honor them in their last years with ill health. Not easy, but no regrets. And I think that's a big thing. Don't regret certain things. Yeah. Urga says, got the Ephesians 6:4 verse here instructs fathers do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and the instruction of the Lord. So I think that context there, discipline and instruction in the Lord. I don't know. I'm sure a somebody and a commentator could examine what the react to provoke to anger is, but it is not meant that you don't discipline, you don't give instruction, you don't guide your children. That is not what that says. So I think it's talking particularly there about abuse, but you bring them up in discipline and instruction in the Lord, which some people will not like, but that is what is required. So I think that's an important thing. And I guess we'll probably end there. I love it when we have little Bible lessons. It's kind of fun. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing weekend. I have one clip from last week on RNN clips from our live stream that I'll post, and then I'll be posting these throughout the weeks for somebody who can't attend the whole thing. They want the different portions. So we'll do that. So these are so fun, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful weekend with your families and friends. And we shall speak again very